Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Noobs in Space from Cosmos Games. Noobs in Space is a 3 to 5 player cooperative game which players must work together in order to accomplish goals, and this is going to be an impossible game to review. Well, not impossible, but the question is, how can I convey what the game is doing so you understand what this is without ruining your experience because of the nature of what the game is. This is a 3 to 5 player game. It's cooperative, like I mentioned already. The game is going to give you a tutorial that's going to be this hand of cards over here, and then it's also going to give you a set of cards. Now, this is not the only set of cards. This is one set of cards. There's a whole bunch more cards in the box. You see, what you're going to do in the game is you're going to take all the cards, and you're going to separate out the cards by their numbers. So you can see there's different numbers around the edge over here, and each number corresponds to whether that card is in that mission. So, for example, this card is in mission 1 and 2. This card in missions 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. There will be no spoilers, except those that I heavily warn you are semi-spoiler adjacent, but I didn't ruin anything for you just there. The point is, you have a whole bunch of cards. Some cards are used in some missions. There are 8 different missions, plus a tutorial, and then you have to go ahead and play the mission. In order to play the mission, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and divvy up the cards to the players in the game. So you can take all the cards, divide them into roughly even piles. I'm not going to count them out. I'm just going to make piles like this. The game does operate a bit at higher player counts, and if there are things like this on the back of the card, that means there's some degree of color blindness associated with this card, and so give this card to another player and swap with one of theirs, or just don't play the game with all color blind people who have potential issues with colors. But with that said, you're going to have these cards over here, and once you have your cards, you're going to go ahead and look at your cards, and this is where the problem begins, because now you have to start talking to the other players, and you can say whatever you want, but you cannot show them your cards, and that's important, and it matters more than you know. Now, this is where I am for the next minute and a half or so. I might show you some things in my hand, okay? I might show you some things in my hand. I'm going to show you some things in my hand because I want you to understand what's actually happening. I want you to understand. I will not ruin the experience. In my opinion, what I'm about to show you should not in any way ruin your experience, even for the first mission, okay? But if you do want to skip this, look for the little spoiler tag. I'm going to have a spoiler tag right about now, and then I'll have an end spoiler tag in a second. So just look for those tags so you can miss anything whatsoever. But again, really shouldn't ruin your experience. So I have a hand of cards over here, and I'm specifically choosing what to show you over here. Honestly, my hand's great because right about now I can show you my hand of cards without ruining your experience. So for example, I have this card over here. I got this card. I got another one of these cards that looks similar to that one. This card's a little bent. I'm going to round out that corner over there because I can keep playing this game. We have this little lever over here that says thrust. We have a card over here that has some text on it. We have a mission number, and then we have a spaceship. That's what we got over here. So we got an assortment of things. How do we actually accomplish the game? We go back. End spoiler tag, I guess. I guess we'll end the spoiler tag. So frustrating. But what I'm going to have here is now we're going back to rules. Maybe I'll do a re-spoiler tag, I don't know. We're going to go back to rules over here because what we do have in the hand is we have a card which we're going to briefly flash towards the screen. Boom, there we go. Just don't read that. You probably can't anyway. What's important is that there's a number on top of the card. This is not a spoiler. There's a number on top of the card, and the reason that's important is because the rules part of this is you have to accomplish the challenges in order. That's what you have to do. So there are going to be cards in the game, and they'll have numbers at the top, and I might have 3 of them. You might have 1. I might have 2. Whatever amounts of challenges we need to accomplish, let's say there's 4 challenges in this mission. Well, then between the players at the table, there will be 4 cards that have a number at the top in order 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I will go ahead and I will read my card, which I will not do because spoilers. So I'm going to read my card. I'm going to read what the card says to do, and the card is going to have some degree of instructions at the table, and those instructions are going to have some of those other cards that I showed you a minute ago. They might reference some of these cards that I have in my hand. They might reference cards that you have in your hand, but they give us a set of instructions that will require players to talk and coordinate with each other. Now, depending on the game difficulty, depending on how the cards are distributed, the fewer players you have, the more likely you'll have cards that you'll be able to kind of deduce things on your own. But the game thrives the most when the thing that I'm reading off corresponds completely with nothing I have in my hand and only the things you have in your hand. So this is where I'm going to make things up. I'm going to entirely make up this next bit. It does not exist in any single way in the game. Challenge number 1. There should be 5 colors in play. One of these colors is not like the other. Take the 4 remaining colors, and then organize those in the order that they should be structured. Okay, cool. Well, what does that mean? We have 5 colors. One's not like the other. From the other colors, organize them in the way that they should be structured. Now, this is where, and again, everything I'm saying is completely made up now. We're just going to go with it over here. Let's pretend that there's 5 orbs, 5 orbs with different colors. Okay, great. 5 orbs with different colors. One of these colors is not like the other, and organize these orbs in the order that they should be structured in. Okay, so how are we supposed to communicate and figure that out? That's where, by talking, by describing, because if you had all 5 cards on the table, again, completely made up, this does not exist, if you had all 5 cards on the table, you would be able to see the differences between them right away. But what you don't realize is that from the 5 colored orbs that I have in my hands, in the various hands, maybe one of the orbs on the top of it has, like, you know, a certain number of dashes on it. And if we actually talk and communicate, we'll realize, well, my colored red orb has 2 dashes on the top, and your colored green orb has 3 dashes on the top. That's how we know the order. And then we know that maybe there's 2 reds, and the rest of them are not. So there's 2 reds, not 1 red, and so maybe if we can communicate to each other, then we know that's the color that's not like the other because it's a duplicate. And so through talking to each other, you will effectively communicate information about the cards that you see in your hand. So just to give you an example, nope, I'm not doing spoilers, I already did the spoiler tag, I don't want to do it again. You will be able to more easily pick up on differences if you have similar cards from certain assignments in your hand. And because of the luck of the draw, sometimes you'll have that edge. But effectively, you accomplish the assignment by doing what the assignment says, which usually involves communicating about the things you have in your hand and piecing together pieces of information that is not always as easy as you think. This game does not come down to like me going, well, there's a thing here, this is the thing, this is the thing, this is the thing, okay, that's it. There's a degree of problem solving without being able to see the things yourself. You have to put together the information you see on your card and the information you are being conveyed, that's being conveyed your way as you try to figure out how to accomplish different goals. That's kind of what's happening. You go through the goals, you achieve what you need to achieve, then you read the rulebook where it tells you, flip the page, and if you flip the page, there's a little bit of a picture to show you the table should look like this. The table, if you did it correctly, should look like this because you're putting down cards on the table as you do so. And it'll say, okay, great, and once cards go down the table, you cannot move them. And so I can tell you from having played through the game that I've been able to communicate to others and accomplish certain tasks, and I've also been stuck being unable to accomplish certain tasks, and that very much is dependent on the degree of communication around the things that are in your hand. That's how you play this game. That's how you play Noobs in Space. I'm sorry I can't give you more information. I'd have to like give you actual examples of an assignment. But honestly, the orb thing's not a bad idea. Picture for a second the idea that you have a Christmas ornament. I'm just going to do a Christmas ornament, and it's a different colored Christmas ornaments. And on the top part of the Christmas ornament, the whatever you want to call that silver thing that clicks, that's where you can see the dashes. So the Christmas ornaments might be like red, green, blue, yellow, and red, green, blue, yellow, but the tops of them have different dashes on the little, you know, amount of stripes you see on the little metal thing that screws to it. But then there's 2 reds, and so you know that you don't put down 1 reds. Well, you don't put down one of the reds, but the others you do based on the number of dashes. If that all makes sense. But again, the information is all there, but that information would not be obvious if you're just looking at a single card. You need to communicate with others to be able to figure out how to accomplish your missions and your assignments, and it is challenging, and that's Noobs in Space. Play that for 8 more missions and you are done. At that point, you take this copy and you go ahead and gift it or lend it to someone else because you can't play it again. I mean, you're allowed to play it again, but you probably shouldn't play it again unless your goal is to play it again to teach others, but don't really, you know, get too involved in the solving of the assignments because you know how to do it. That is going to be one of the downsides, which means it's time to get into the review. Time to get into the review of this game, now that we're talking about upsides and downsides. Ease of play. This game, you can get people up and running on this game in a few minutes. Genuinely. I'm going to divvy up the cards. Honestly, the tutorial is helpful to me if I don't know the game, but I would skip the tutorial if I'm teaching others the game. So for me, if I was teaching others the games, I would just divvy up all the cards from all the ones over there, and I'd say, great, I'm going to participate, but I'm not going to help you except to answer questions around rules. And now we all have a hand of cards, and great, whoever has the 1, read that card out and follow that assignment. And then just continue from there. Communicate to others, talk, ease of play, very easy. Each individual session it ranges, but I'd say generally in the range of, it ranges on player count too. It ranges on a few factors. I'd say an individual round of this is going to run you 15 to 30 minutes is what a round is going to take. Not that long to get through, but they do get more complicated as you go through them, but they build on the foundational knowledge you've acquired, and it can be longer at higher player counts because there's less immediate knowledge in front of you and therefore more communication. But I'd say around 15 to 30 minutes per session. Past that, there are 8 sessions in play. That's all there is in this little box. Then you pass on to the next person and they hopefully have a good time. Very solid ease of play. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see that's not liking, starting off with what I like, the game feels innovative, maybe? I don't know if that's the right word. I think this concept has been done. The concept of hidden communication or hiding piece of information has been done. But the way this kind of has you dealing out cards to other, and also I will say, just the way the fact that you can reuse cards. So that, like, this card will have a certain use in mission 1, but it'll have a different use in mission 3 based on the combination of things. It's not the way cards interact with each other, they'll constantly be reference points. So it might be, imagine those 5 Christmas ornaments. Maybe there's some text on one that says, well, you know what? If you also have the Christmas tree in play, then arrange these ornaments in reverse order instead. You might have that kind of conversation. So the same puzzle might manifest slightly differently depending on the mission in play, in a way that forces you to constantly re-examine what you know, even about something that you already know. And so overall, it feels like a very innovative puzzle that is very easy to table, definitely builds a degree of team building. Like if you're looking for team building exercises, this is great. This is great at being able to give you that communication, that silent communication, as you have to figure out how to actually communicate effectively everything you want to communicate, all the things you know, all the things you see, but you have to not just know it and see it, you have to give that over to your teammates, which works really well. And so it's a fun little puzzle that is just, it's a fun little puzzle. It's a fun little puzzle of communication that innovates upon itself as you go through the arc of the 8 missions and gives you it just feels like a team. It feels like a team building exercise. That's what this is. Noobs in Space is a team building exercise in a box. That's what this game is. And it's well done as far as how easy it is to teach, how easy it is to play, how fast it is to teach and play. And more than that, I can't tell you the specifics about like the assignments and what I liked about certain assignments because that would be spoiler-ish. So I'm going to avoid that. But I like the game. It's just well done. The amount of content you have in these 8 missions and the way it forces you to communicate and the way it forces you to like deal with new information, it's a good game in a box is what it is. As far as what I don't like in the game, the main thing is going to be that this game works best at higher player counts. This game is decent at 3, better at 4, and best at 5 players. That distribution of knowledge is really where the game thrives. That minimum 3 player count is accurate. Do not play this game at 2 players. Is it technically playable 2 players? Yes, but it really isn't going to be as good. Even 3 shouldn't, in the game, the box lists 3 to 5. I believe you can do it at 2, but just don't do that at 2. And 3 to 5 is really where it's at, with higher player counts being even better. That's going to be a factor. And then obviously there's the lack of replayability, which is another factor as well. Not necessarily a factor of making this not a good experience on its own. Think of this as an unlock game, an unlock experience, an escape room in a box where, yes, you cannot play this forever yourself, but you can pass it on to the next person. And I have to assume that Cosmos will put out like Noobs in Space Part 2, Noobs in Space, The Return of the Miscommunication. I don't know, whatever kind of a title they're going to throw on this. I think that this has, similar to the way you have unlock games and escape games, I feel exit games, I feel like this has replayability in terms of the ways they can add to the universe and give you more interesting puzzles. But the concept I really like. To me, actually, unlock games kind of thrive in the 1 to 3 player count, and I think that this one over here, or exit games, I should say, let's say Cosmos, exit games thrive at 1 to 3 players, and this thrives at 3 to 5 players. And so having those 2 lines can really give people just a variety of different forms of content within these puzzles in just different forms of how you're trying to address it. But limited replayability and just the higher player count is the biggest thing. The last thing I'll say is that, as far as things that you may not like, there are some puzzles that you almost have to fail to understand the way you're communicating. Meaning, failure in this game is not a bad thing. But I think that especially early on, there are some puzzles that unless you get lucky, you may not even have the tools to understand how you can communicate. Meaning, for example, going back to the Christmas ornaments, there are puzzles where if you had 2 different Christmas ornaments in your hand, then you understand how to communicate to everyone else around the table. But if you don't have 2 Christmas ornaments, the idea that you'd be able to have figured things out might be very hard if that didn't work out. And there is that kind of information stuff in the play where sometimes you'll just fail a puzzle, even though like the only way to not have failed it would just be to over-describe absolutely everything. I don't mind those at all. It adds to the learning experience and it teaches you more what to ask for and look for next time. But it is the kind of thing where sometimes if you fail it, you just fail it. And that is something to be mindful of. As far as final thoughts on Noobs in Space, this is one that, despite my inability to really say anything about the game, like I'll show you stuff in the back of the box here. Like these are things that in theory won't give you spoilers because they're on the back of the box and so they shouldn't. But there's cards and you're going to look at the cards. You're going to communicate about the nature of how you interact with those cards and it's really well done. I just like it. I think it's a good game as far as, it's really well done. It's a really fun experience as far as that team building exercise kind of, again, escape room / team building. It feels less like a pure escape room and more about that communication. It feels like someone took like Hanabi and combined it with an unlock game and boom, here you go. A replayable game, Noobs in Space, that will give you, 2 to 3 hours of gameplay out of it. Maybe a little less. Depends if you're playing the same group. Like you could probably knock out all 8 sessions in like 2 hours if you're playing through it pretty actively, I imagine. It gives you a good experience in a box that I think is fairly clever as far as how it's implemented, and just really enjoyed the experience. For me, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It's not the best game mechanically, not by a long shot, but in terms of the experience I got out of it, it gives you a strong sense of team building that I really appreciate and can highly recommend. To me, this is exactly, like anytime someone says, hey, let's play an escape room with 4 or 5 people, I say no. Unlock games are best at lower levels. Unlocks, Exit, all those games thrive at 1, 2, and maybe 3 players. To me, this is exactly what I'd recommend. As next time someone says to me, hey, let's play an unlock game with 4 players, I'm pulling out Noobs in Space and handing it to them and saying, let's play this instead. It is a much better experience, and you can arguably replay it to a degree. Like, you could be a player teaching others and replay it a little bit, just to obviously keep the fact that you know stuff out of the loop and just be an enabler as opposed to one of the problem solvers in that situation. Anyways, yeah, a 4 out of 5. Really enjoy this. Can easily recommend it. Noobs in Space. As far as other game recommendations, it's not going to be a shocker here, but first of all, any unlock or exit game, if you like those, I think Noobs in Space is very much hitting a similar genre, just for higher player counts. And then similarly, if you're looking for that degree of hidden communication, kind of, where you're trying to solve a puzzle together through communication as opposed to anything else, well, games like Hanabi and The Crew, despite the fact that you can't really communicate, will have that same sense of teamwork as you work to solve a puzzle together. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.